I was fortunate to meet Paul second half of last year, and I've been intrigued with the whole hydrogen space, and then I learned that Paul has a couple of strings to his bow. We're going to hear about the Baltic Hydrogen Group. There's a real interesting ecosystem approach to what Baltic Hydrogen is doing. So would you please welcome Paul Howard, Baltic Hydrogen Group, to the stage. Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Great to be here. Really appreciate the invitation. I think I'll just start a bit by talking about hydrogen. Hydrogen is a really interesting gas. It's number one in the periodic table, and it accounts for 75% of all matter in the universe. It's the source of all energy here on Earth, of course, from the sun. It's non-toxic, it's odorless, and in fact, it's a harmless gas. And what we can do with hydrogen, I think, has been spoken about not just by Greg earlier on Thursday, but a couple of others, especially Theo and Eduardo and the team, talking about synthetic aviation fuel. And for those that don't know, synthetic aviation fuel is basically a green, if you use green hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced from renewable energy, you can make jet fuel, right? So you can take away this problem about using fuel from fossil fuels to drive cars and drive planes, and the output from it is water. It's non-toxic. It's environmentally friendly and safe, and it goes back into the hydrological cycle. And so hydrogen is a fascinating molecule, and it makes up around 60% of the matter in your body as well, in one component or another. So it's fascinating. And I think as Greg had mentioned yesterday, there's two things he mentioned about the hydrogen business, which I'll address at the end of my speech here. But it's about the molecule, and it's about the molecule hydrogen and how we use it to transport energy. So I'll go into a quick presentation here. But before I do that, I'll just talk a bit about our executive summary. So what I'm here for today is to talk a bit about the next steps in our journey. We set up the company 3 years ago, and we are looking for a pre-seed investment at this stage to really ramp up where we are at the moment. Overall, the presentation, I'll just take you on a quick journey through it all, but we're effectively an infrastructure company. So we're building infrastructure that will create hydrogen, store hydrogen, and distribute hydrogen. And we do that in several different ways. Just briefly, what we'll do, we've got about 15 slides to go through from here. I'll just step over here, but we've got a bit of a history about the project. I'll focus on that. A bit about our strategy across the Baltic countries, who we're working with, and consistently, it's been a theme. The team has been brought up in this weekend so far, in this week. So I'll talk a bit about that and our financial model, which is actually made by somebody from KPMG. So we've got a full 15-year financial model with positive cash flows and EBITDA. I can talk you through that as well. I've given a bit of introduction already about what we're doing. I'm happy to obviously talk to people. The reason I'm here at FTE is to really build a network. And what I'm looking for is not a investment of money straight away. I'm looking for a financial partner who can work with us over the life cycle of the project. So a little bit about the company and why we're unique. Hydrogen can be made from fossil fuels. They call it blue hydrogen, they call it grey hydrogen. It can also be made from renewables. So that could be something like hydropower, it could be wind, it could be solar. So we're 100% green. All of the hydrogen that we make is from a green, sustainable energy resource. And as we all know, the world is destined for absolute climate catastrophe at the moment. And I think that's the most pressing thing on my mind when we look at how we use energy and where we take the energy from. But a cool thing with hydrogen is that you're not disintermediating the BPs, the Exxons, the Shells, all these behemoths in the industry, all these incumbents in the industry. They're not going to go into nuclear power in the next 20 years, because they've got all of this pipeline and plumbing and business all associated with the hydrocarbon industry. And so to take them on a journey with a fuel source that they can use currently with their pipelines and refineries makes total business sense for a lot of these big competitors. And I think that's something that's quite important for hydrogen. You know, we've already got hydrogen in our pipes for natural gas. We can put that direct into the homes. The plumbing and the infrastructure that we spoke about in a couple of sessions doesn't need to be revolutionized in order to convert to a renewable future. We're a fully vertical solution. So I'm going to show you a bit about the industry. And some of the problems that companies have had in the industry is that they will produce hydrogen, but they won't have an off-taker. They will store hydrogen, but they don't have anybody to produce it. What I'm going to demonstrate here is a full vertical solution where we produce, store, and distribute. Every kilogram of hydrogen we are producing has got a kilogram of off-taker contract associated with it. And that is key. That was one of the things that Greg was talking about yesterday. Efficiency and scalability. We're using proven technology. Electrolysis has been around for decades, literally 100 years. We're not doing some new, sexy, funky thing. This is proven technology. Metacon, who's one of our partners, they're a listed Swedish company, 400 krona market cap. They produce electrolyzers. And they've been doing that for 30 years. We're customizable, we're localized. That was something else that Greg picked up on yesterday, is that the transport of hydrogen, he says you don't want to be involved in anything that's transporting hydrogen. And he's right. So what we're doing is we're building our production and consumption sites right next to the place of source, the power source and the off-taker. And strategic off-taker network. So we're not just putting ourselves servicing one industry or one off-taker. We've got a series of different off-takers and series of different industries so that over the next 30 years with these infrastructure projects, as the economy grows and slumps and grows and slumps, we've got different people and different brands, not just say, for example, like a transport brand or a luxury brand, but we've got a full spectrum of off-takers. So a bit of history. The last 3 years, we started off with purchasing some facilities in Eastern Europe. These are hydropower dams in Eastern Europe. And we realized quickly that you can sell that energy to the grid, but then it fluctuates, obviously during the seasons and during the day. You can combat that by using, storing up the water, for example, backing up the water. But there's certain limitations to that. We then had to bring in solar, so that during the summer months you can generate more heat and get more energy from the estate. And we've also then embarked on partnerships with the Hydrogen Association of Estonia, the Hydrogen Association of Europe, and most of the major hydrogen companies that are focused around Europe. I'll just talk quickly about what we're doing in Latvia. So our first phase is expansion of the project to our first customer, which is Riga International Airport. So this is a flagship project where we will be leveraging the airport's solar plant, which is next to the airport, to produce hydrogen gas. We'll then be selling the hydrogen gas to a synthetic aviation fuel manufacturer, who will then fuel the jets at Riga Airport. Some of you might know, in 2027, airports across Europe have been mandated to reduce their carbon footprint, otherwise they'll be fined. So we're there solving a problem for the airport. We actually walked into the meeting in January 2023 thinking we'll have to sell hydrogen to the airport. And we walked in there and they said, look, we've already ordered a fleet of ground handling vehicles to service the airport and reduce our carbon footprint. We don't have a hydrogen supplier. So we came in there and we solved this problem for them. We literally walked out with an understanding with them about the next steps from the meeting. For example, they've got snow in Latvia for 3 months of the year, and you need to keep that airport open. So you have to have snow plows to do that, and they're very energy intensive machines. And if you fuel them up with diesel, you can be back on the road in 7 minutes. If you have electric vehicles trying to do the same thing, they need to charge for 7 hours. So straight away you're doubling your capex expenditure on snow plows and ground handling vehicles by going electric. And with respect to batteries, in Latvia, where you've got minus centigrade temperatures for 3 months of the year, your fuel efficiency drops by over 30%. Plus, they've got to be refurbished every 7 years. Lithium is a relatively toxic material. It's dug out of the ground in big open cast mines. It's pretty nasty to get rid of and needs to be refurbished. An electrolyzer can run itself with relatively low servicing fees for over 20 to 30 years. And guess what? It needs water and oxygen. No horrible materials. And it's a bit cheaper, I believe, than a lithium battery, which obviously needs to be replaced every 7 years. Sorry, a question?
Two more things that speaks for hydrogen. One is that lithium is mined by child labor, and number two is 93% of all EV batteries are made in China, so we become even more dependent on China.
Yeah, the China question was a really interesting one because we're working with manufacturers in Europe as well for our equipment, which means that we qualify for European grants. So yeah, to your point, I mean, it's a horrible horror story about child labor and environmental degradation in Indonesia to produce enough batteries that are going to be tossed away in 7 years' time anyway. Thank you. Anyway, long story short, we're working with Riga International Airport. We have a signed LOI with the airport as their hydrogen servicing production company. So that's really exciting for us. That took over 7 months to negotiate. Some of our partners in the space, as I mentioned, Meticon, they're a listed Swedish company. We're working extensively with the Ventspils Freeport Authority, Hydrogen Europe Association, Atmos Clear. They're going to be an investor in the second round. They've got a green wind park in Ventspils, which we'll be leveraging as part of our phase 2. We are also dealing with waste to hydrogen or waste to power. I know that's something Eduardo was commenting on, so I'm looking forward to talking more with him about that. And then, of course, a variety of off-takers, because we're not targeting the retail market. The day when you'll go and buy a hydrogen car to fill up your hydrogen car, that could be a decade away. We don't want to get involved with that, but we will have the facility to do it if that comes along. And that was, a point made by Greg the other day, which is that you don't want to be involved in this retail transportation network. All of our off-taking agreements are with places like the airport, are with cement producers, are with a established bus network. Riga uses hydrogen buses already. If you've never been to Riga, you can go to the bus station there. We've got a hydrogen refueling station right next to the bus network because every kilogram that we're producing there has got an off-take contract already agreed with the local government. So what we found out 3 years of working in this business is that there's a very, should we say, diverse mix of people. There's clearly some backhanders and fraudsters in the industry. And so you see in the top left here, this is us. My COO sat next to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We work extensively with a lot of very reputable industry bodies. And I have that in there just to demonstrate that we're out there on the scene. People know who we are. We're legit. And then I'm going to talk a bit about strategy. So our strategy, and I'll go into why we're choosing Eastern Europe shortly, but Latvia, if you've not been there, it's a beautiful country, about 2 million people, relatively small. It's been forgotten about in terms of hydrogen and renewable development because everybody's focused on the UK, Germany, France. So it's one of those outlying countries, but yet it's in the European Union. It's part of NATO. They use the euro. And there's 2 types of people in Latvia. There's some very hard-working people in Latvia, and these people will work, construct, and build. And then there's alcoholics. So you can guess which ones I have in my team. So we have built a facility that is currently just outside Riga, in the center of the map here. And each of these circles is a production site for hydrogen. And we have signed LOIs and MOUs with all of the energy producers. So for example, on the coast here, we have wind farm production. So we're using the wind from the coast. And as we move inland here, Latvia's got a big agricultural sector out towards the east. We use waste to power pyrolysis machines. And that really leverages the local resources in the country, rather than sticking, the waste to hydro facilities on the coast where there's not so much agricultural land. So that's a little bit about Latvia. And what we realized with hydrogen is actually a scalable problem. It's big economies of scale in it. And so we then looked also at Estonia and Lithuania, and we've been working extensively with all of the local governments and the local bodies in all three countries. And just to present you a little bit about the market opportunity here, most of our team, or my CEO and my COO, are both Latvian. I'll come back to the team in a moment, actually. But we've got a similar sort of size opportunity in all three Baltic countries. And that's quite exciting. Latvia, for example, has about 45% of the total energy consumption in green energy in the region, so it's got a glut of green energy available. And it's a fascinating country, Latvia. It's got 400 rivers and over 2,000 hydropower stations, very small-scale power stations that were built during the agricultural revolution around 200 years ago. And sort of a side story of how we got into this was we bought 2 of these big estates and refurbished these hydropower stations to produce electricity. And so if you try and build a new dam in Europe, you can't even get a planning permission for 20 years because it's an ecological disaster. So all of these little power station facilities have already got the ecosystem supporting the fish and the wildlife in them and integrated into them. And all we do is we refurbish the sort of old engineering work. So it's been a fascinating part of the project. That was 3 years ago. Anyway, back to today. Team's really important. I'll just run through a few things here. Martins, who's my CEO, Martins and I have worked together for over 12 years. He is an engineer by trade and is very talented in managing people and managing big teams. Paul Hemsley. Paul has been he's our CFO. Paul has been working as a CFO for over 30 years. His most recent company was a renewable battery production facility in Scotland, so he's very familiar with how we model the finances behind an infrastructure project, because you're looking at a 15-year to 20-year investment minimum. Our long-term contracts are all built over those time horizons and depreciations. Kasper's our COO, again, Latvian. He's an expert in managing relationships with local government. And we've got a bunch of other folks as well. Ragnar's, who's our head of production. Ragnar's works on the only hydrogen refueling station in the Baltic countries. So if you look at the entire Baltics, there's nobody else who's got 6 years experience, even 2 years experience of working with these facilities. Ragnar's is in our team. He's a shareholder in the company. So we have the team that can do this. Alexander has been working over 20 years in the biggest hydropower stations in Latvia with the local government. And we realised, of course, it's no good just having the engineers and the executive committee. You've got to have strategic advisors. So Helena works at Riga Technical University and advises government policy in Latvia. So one of the things that we're working on is getting hydrogen cars to be classified as a green mode of transport. That's costing about 70,000 euros this year to get that law passed. So we're fully aware of having all of these people and all of these key partners in the team to really get this project to where it needs to be. And just a final note on the executive committee. I mean, we all like to have skin in the game. We've been funding this project ourselves from the executive committee for the last 3 years. So we've all got, skin in the game. So what's our expansion plan? We need to hire 170 people over the next 3 years. And that's just for Latvia. So we've built a comprehensive business model that takes all of this into account. The financial model takes inputs and variations in the price of hydrogen, variations in the price of water, tax, etc., etc. We also have built that financial model without any government subsidies or grants. And that's interesting because when we look at our phase 1, which is just the airport, we've got 4 phases in Latvia. Our capex is 35 million euros. If we get a grant for 10 million euros, that suddenly changes our whole model again. In effect, it's an additional 10 million euros in the pocket that we did not expect. So even without those grants, even without these subsidies, which we're fully eligible for and working towards, because it takes sort of 9 to 10 months to do the negotiation on these things, we're looking at 22%, 11% was our cost of capital. I think it's on the next slide, but it's a 22% return on investment over the next 3 years. So we've got financial models. Again, I've just got snapshots of them all here. We've got a consolidated model as well. And really what we're doing here is we're phasing in the development of the infrastructure across Latvia. And the reason that we're phasing it in is because each time we do part of this project, we will learn, we will develop, and we'll roll out the next phase. We don't need all of this capex in the bank from day one. We want to slowly draw down on that money and prove to our financial partner that we're able to deliver and that we're hitting the KPIs. And that will give them the assurance that, yes, these guys are hitting the KPIs, they're doing what they said, they're on track. We'll give them the next, $2 million. We'll give them the next $3 million or euros. So what's our ask? Well, I'm going to wrap this up quickly now and move to questions, but we got some really exciting news about 2 weeks ago. The total build for the entire project is around 610 million euros. That's across all 3 countries. Latvia, which is where we've been focused on, is just shy of 200 million euros. Anybody who's willing to take a look at our financial model, I can arrange a meeting with afterwards. We're currently selling equity in the company for the pre-seed phase, which will effectively build our proof of concept and secure the offtake arrangement with Riga International Airport. We can sit down in a meeting with the board. There are 3 people on the board at the airport. They know us very, very well. And we're just looking for a financial partner so that we can go to that meeting with the airport and say, we now have the financial backing to deliver this. We don't need the money in our bank. We just need to go into that meeting with a financial partner who's got the firepower to do it. And 2 weeks ago, we signed an MOU, which will deliver us 610 million euros on condition that we produced a proof of concept with the airport, requiring the pre-seed. So it's, and we're very fortunate, it's actually a European fund who we've been working with for over a year. So we're really excited by that. We now have 6 months to deliver the proof of concept. And as part of that, 3.5, we've got a soft commitment from a lead already for 1 mil. So I'm basically just looking for the extra 2.5 to get this thing sorted. And we would talk about equity in the company and how you want to be a part of that, because once that is solved, we have got an amazing growth story here. Least of all for the company, but more importantly, just for our little bit of the world where we can try and help make things a better place. Thank you.
Wow, very good. Well done, that's superb. And it's a big player. You kind of alluded to who they might be and so forth. That's significant. Really good job. It's infrastructure, so it's big. So people that might want to participate here in that 2.5, they might say, well, gosh, this is fascinating, looks really well executed and all the rest of it, but is my 500,000 or is my 200,000 going to make a difference? Is it going to get squashed out or diluted? How does somebody get comfortable with the idea that they're putting in something which is pretty high risk? The 610 million is in 6 months. How should I look at that if I want to participate in that 2.5 million?
Yeah, we've got a convertible note which we would negotiate the terms on. I think important for us is that we have the right partners involved. Okay. Friends and family have been involved so far. Yep. We're an honest, friendly group of people, and we want to work with people. That's key for us. Okay.
All right, so somebody even from somebody who could have experience working in airport services, they could have experience working in the energy industry in the Baltic, Nordic region, those kinds of things, as well as people who just have been involved in scaling infrastructure businesses.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got to hire 180 people at some point over the next 3 years. We've got existing service contracts with Metacon to service their hydrogen fueling stations in Slovakia and Sweden. So, we're generating cash flow as a company.
Yep.
This is about scaling up before somebody comes in to take this, dessert and cherry off the table. Because in the next 3-4 years, what we'll see is Exxon, BP, Shell, Elf, all these companies are going to look to places like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and say, hey, we need to now go into these markets here. Yep. And so we, at that point, and we've been discussing this with the people who are backing us financially so far, is, okay, how do we look at an exit from that point on? So, yeah, big opportunity.
Questions? Questions for Paul? Paul, yeah? Yeah, it's cool. It's very cool. I agree. I mean, it's in some respects, the Baltic region is big enough, but it's an important test market. It's a great way to ring fence the opportunity, isn't it? Right? You're not trying to be everywhere. You're trying to prove something in one place and make a difference, so that you can then say that model of delivering that worked.
It is, yeah, and the government have been very enthusiastic with us. We're very well connected with the Latvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're very well connected internally in Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia. There's been a lot of great companies that have come from Estonia. I didn't realize it that, Skype, for example, was an Estonian company years ago. There's a lot of innovation that happens in the Baltics. Yep. And we think that this is the next big area that people will start to look at in the next 5-7 years. Whether that is a buyout or whether it is an IPO or something else, we want to be the people who are giving that opportunity. And we've got the team of people to do it. We've got all of the contracts in place with folks. We just need to now go into that meeting and say, we're going to build it because we've got the capital to do it.
Yep, excellent. Excellent. Well, listen, Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've had some great questions and involvement in the overall FTE, so we really appreciate your involvement. Thank you for coming here. And if anyone wants to reach you, you're here until?
Sunday.
Awesome. Good. All right.
Anyone who wants to ski tomorrow, let me know.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good stuff. Listen, Paul Howard, Baltic Hydrogen Group. Thank you, Paul.